Awesome. All right, so we are live. Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to wherever, depending on where you are. Thanks to everyone for joining us today. If you hear a little squeak in the background, that's just our collective dog, Pickles, playing with us. So, she's here with us today. My name is Chanel Aponte Pearson. My pronouns are she, her, they, and them. I'm calling in from the land of the Munsee Lenape tribe, more widely known as Bronx County. I'm a light-skinned Black and Puerto Rican person with a short afro, wearing Black glasses and a navy and yellow flannel shirt. Today's event is brought to you by the Negress Film Society. This is a collective of Black women and non-binary filmmakers. The work that we create, the programming that we offer, and the conversations that we facilitated are all rooted in a legacy of collective art making, institution building, and consciousness raising, grounded in the personal and political realities of Black people everywhere. We are really happy to partner with the Measles Documentary Center, where clips from featured films are being screened as part of their sidewalk cinema. So we hope that you've been able to enjoy those. I want to give a big thank you to the City Artists Court for helping make this event possible. And then I also want to give a huge thank you to Nene Diallo, who is our special events coordinator, for which none of this would be possible. She's in the back end taking care of everything. And I also want to thank my fellow Negress members, Stephanie St-Ange and Yvonne Shirley. The Collective Conversation Series is a way to highlight and amplify scholars and filmmakers who have engaged or are currently engaging in communal forms of filmmaking. We recognize collectivity as a political act, and we hope that we are able to learn, grow, and reimagine a new world together. So please keep following us on social media to register for upcoming conversations in the series. So today we are absolutely honored to have Zeinabu, Irene Davis, Barbara McCullough, and Ben Caldwell, members of the LA Rebellion movement, as they discuss their experiences as film students at UCLA, but more importantly, how the act of collectivity has continued throughout their careers. So just a little, I'll just speak briefly about our guest today. Born in Philadelphia, Zeinabu Irene Davis is a director and producer who received an MA in African Studies and an MFA in Film and Television Production at UCLA. Zeinabu combines narrative storytelling and a range of poetic experimental techniques to give voice to African American women's experiences of love, joy, struggle, and self-realization. Her latest project, Spirits of Rebellion, is a documentary work in progress, documentary which gathers fellow LA Rebellion filmmakers, and it explores topics in African American film. She is currently a professor of communications at UC San Diego. And just as a FYI, Spirits of Rebellion screened last year at our second annual Black Women's Film Conference, and we have been obsessed with and connected to Zeinabu ever since. So thank you so much for being part of just working with us and continuing to work with us. Ben Cardwell, who will join us very shortly, is an arts educator and independent filmmaker who grew up assisting his grandfather, who projected movies at a small movie theater in New Mexico. His passion for the visual arts led him to study film at UCLA and reside in Leimert Park neighborhood, which is the epicenter for African American art scene in LA. After teaching film and video at Howard University, Ben returned to LA and created an independent studio for video production and experimentation that later became the Chaos Network. It remains the only organization of its kind in South Central LA that offers courses in video production, animation, website development, and a host of other activities. So we are so grateful to have Ben once he joins us shortly. And last but not least, born in New Orleans to a family of traditional jazz musicians, we have Barbara McCullough, where she spent most of her life in Los Angeles. Before documentaries, Experimental film and video was her first love, and I want to say that that love has manifested in projects like Water Ritual #1, An Urban Rite of Purification, Fragments, and the World Saxophone Quartet. Barbara's most recent project, Horace Tapscott Musical Griot, is a documentary on the late Horace Tapscott, musical genius, community activist, and jazz musician. Barbara's work has been screened and presented at museums and galleries here in the United States and abroad. So really quickly, I just want to say, Barbara, you know, while we were coordinating this, Barbara was curious about the term Negress. So I just felt like I wanted to share with both Barbara and everybody who's listening in today that our collective began when our co-founder, Kumi James, organized a screening showcase back in 2013 entitled I'm a Negress of Noteworthy Talent. And this screening centered the work of Black women filmmakers. And the title was inspired by Kara Walker's 2011 solo exhibition of the same name. And after seeing how successful that screening was, Kumi and several of the other filmmakers convened and created what would later become the new Negress Film Society. So thank you so much for being with us tonight. And sharing your thoughts and sitting in conversation with each other. I'm sure y'all have been in conversation with each other many times before, but thanks for sitting with us today and really sharing your insights on the importance of communal art making and the importance of collectivity. So I will pass it off to you, and thank you again so much for being with us today.
Chanel, just one more thing before you go. If people have questions or comments, should they put them in the chat as we go along, or do you want us to wait until the end?
They can do it as it go along. Yeah, if you have any questions along the way, go ahead and put the comments in, and Nene on the back end will let you know those questions that are coming in.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks so much.
All right. So I am, just so people know, I am on Kumi Island in San Diego, California. And for visual descriptors, I'm a medium skin, I don't know what color skin I have right now, but brown skin Black woman with a short reddish afro, silver earrings, and a green top on. And I have film posters behind me from my films, including Spirits of Rebellion, which is about the LA Rebellion. So,
okay.
Go ahead, Barbara.
Okay, so I'm Barbara McCullough. Here I am. I don't know how to describe myself. I usually avoid it. But anyway, I am a mature Black woman, basically. And I'm right now in Upper Marlboro, Maryland. I live in Pasadena, California. And I'm visiting my daughter, who I haven't seen in 2 years. And basically trying to just sort of find my way these days. I don't have a new project yet, but I have some things that I want to do. And hopefully, the pandemic sort of ended a bunch of stuff that I was trying to do. So what I'm doing now is basically I am going back to the stories. I have started writing and working on those and started another one yesterday. One of the things about doing biographical stuff is sometimes it can be very, very scary. It's like revealing yourself when maybe you didn't want all of that to come out.
Right.
But anyway, I am a filmmaker and a video maker, and I started off with photography, and now I'm, basically trying to figure out what the next thing I want to do.
Right. And installation artist.
And installation, yes.
Yeah. Okay. And then just so people know, as usual, since we all three of us have been and continue to be educators of some sort, Ben is on his way, but he is driving from his class, so he will join us as soon as he can do so safely. So, Barbara, one of the questions that we have is about the whole idea of what a collective is. And I think you have some interesting ideas about what that means to you. And also, when you answer that, could you please include the years that you were actually at UCLA Film School? So just so people have a sense of time and historical context?
Okay, well, actually, I was at UCLA, as an undergraduate.
Oh,
Started in, I think it was like 72.
okay.
And I was in film school, I think, from like 77 to like 84, something like that. And in the days when you could attend UCLA and didn't have, an out date that you had to like get out. And actually, eventually you did have a get out. It was wound up being so many quarters, and then they wanted you like gone. But if that had been, basically enforced, Charles would not have finished some of his work. Because Charles Burnett worked on Killers of Sheep and other things for a very long time. And, we were the beneficiary of being able to be there without having how many quarters you had to matriculate and then leave. But anyway, so I was there. I think I was there when Ben was there. I was there, and Zeinabu came in later. And one of the things that was really kind of interesting is I was taking undergraduate classes over in the film department. And I had taken the third row film classes, which were absolutely, opened my eyes to basically the possibilities of having images of people of color, but also Black people, Black female people. And it was like really amazing because I was first exposed to Sam Ben, and I had not been really familiar with his work until, those classes, but anyway, so that was like the period. And then Julie came along and other people came along, and Kara was there, and then Ofumilaya was there, and other people. All of a sudden there was this influx of women that had not been, like a visible force, that all of a sudden we were, which brings us to the idea going back to, like what do we feel at a collective, or in my case, I would like to change that word around to a collaboration, because it was, you went to whomever it was you felt you could communicate with and whose work you had seen. And so it was like a moral supportive environment. And, you had your ideas, but basically people just, we all worked on each other's projects because that's the way you got it done. And people didn't necessarily, the folks who were there, they didn't necessarily know or understand even what your subject matter was, but it didn't matter. You needed the help, and there they were. So that kind of critique, at least for my experience, wasn't prevalent. However, I think there might have been a critique of that sort before I got into the film school, because it was very politically charged. And essentially the idea was to create for works that were more indicative of who we were as African-American people, not blaxploitation, but who we were, the multitude of stories that, we can convey.
Okay. Let me answer some of the same things just so we can be in conversation. And that is, as Barbara already stated, I came later. I mean, really what brought us all together is the institution, UCLA, for better or for worse. And some of our experiences at the institution were positive, and some of them were not. I mean, I think one of the big things that we all faced was racism, structural racism, and in some cases, sexism at the same time, because we both are there. I'm at UCLA from 83 until 89. And so we're still in that time period where, women were not necessarily seen as people who were behind the camera. Most of my family, when I did say I was going to go to UCLA, thought that I was actually trying to be an actress in front of the camera. So there wasn't that conception that women could be behind the camera as, directors or producers or technical people. So that was a whole nother thing to think about in terms of like how we came to be. And one of the beautiful things of being at UCLA was that it was a public institution. And that meant that we had people who wanted to get a film education that could afford to go to a public institution. And we came from all different parts of the world. So we not only came from places like Philly or New Orleans or the South or New Mexico, we came from, um, different places, even as far as South Africa, Kenya, Nigeria, so far the Caribbean, all over. And we came together at film school. I think I really do like the way that you're looking at it, Barbara, because we didn't give ourselves the name LA Rebellion. It was once people started seeing the work, um, that's when the name LA Rebellion stuck. And it was a term that was coined by
Flytail.
Taylor, and also I believe his wife has something to do with it, Marnie. So
But also too, even, during that period of time, there was also, things being written about the same filmmakers, but called the LA School, the Los
yes,
Angeles School. And so there was like these two terms, out there in terms of who the filmmakers were at UCLA at that particular point in time, and they were people of color, and they were men and women. So it was interesting how those two terms came about, because when we were there, we didn't call ourselves that. We were filmmakers basically trying to get our work done, and some of us had kids like I did, and I had three. And, and basically it was a period of time that it was very energetic, it was a very energetic period of time. And I guess because you had all the elements as Zeinabu, spoke of, you had people from all over, you had
right.
people from absolutely all over the place, and Ben came from New Mexico, which is like Ben was the only person I've ever met who came from New Mexico.
Oh, right,
I didn't even know there were Black people in New Mexico until I
right,
met Ben.
right. Yeah.
Which was interesting because it had an impact in terms of his aesthetics. And I could see that in the work that he was doing, and it was really, really marvelous to to take a look at the things he'd done, and started not starting off with, but also I saw his photography,
Right.
and that was really very very beautiful work. I mean, extremely beautiful hand painted work.
Mhm. Ben, are you able to join us orally yet?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yep.
yes,
No?
yes, yes. We can
Oh,
hear you.
cool, cool.
Yes.
Yeah, I was listening to you guys. Yeah, I actually was there for two master's degrees. So when I met Barbara, them working on my international business and ethno communications degree.
Mm.
Oh,
So I had already finished my master's with film, and then I found after doing internships with Peter Guger and Hugh Grau, business classes let me know that I needed to stay in school longer because of the business aspects of the needs of filmmaking.
Mm.
And so I went back and started working on that, and then that's when I started working with Shirley Clark, and it extended my reach in the sense of filmmaking to experimental filmmaking, experimental video making with her.
Yeah, and also too, I had a
And
experience.
that, yeah, and that experience with Shirley, especially when it came to media, has been the thing that has kept me really alive ever since then, because her methodology of using the camera as the fourth wall was really phenomenal. I used that as my first initial workshops with my youth in the community. And then I also, just her whole experimental ways of working in a humanistic way, less fascistic way like men do on controlling things. She really dealt with the whole idea of film and media should be more humanistic and human caring. So when we would go out and shoot, we would let the people shoot us first, or handle the cameras, look at the cameras, and then go about the process of videotaping the people. So we would show them that these imperial tools that we have were also, that they had the capacity to also use them.
one of the things that I got out of that experience for Shirley Clarke was a sense of approval, you know, because getting approval was not an easy thing, you know. And it was basically, you know, she would look at my work, and also Mark McCarthy, they would look at my work and they would say, okay, fine, I like what you're doing, just keep doing it, you know. And that was like, that was amazing for me to hear that, you know, because you just didn't get a lot of approval, you know. So you basically, you know, you were able to feel comfortable in your own, you know, your own ideas. And, you know, and the fact that the stories that you wanted to tell, because let's face it, we're all storytellers, you know, and the stories that, you know, wanted to tell, you know, they had an audience, you know. And so that sense of, that was a very much a freeing sense for me to be able to just, you know, go and capture things that basically were not necessarily your run of the mill thing. But again, you know, you were told that's very interesting. And to me, that's one of those catch-all terms for me, because I use it a lot. But it meant something for someone to say, what you're doing is interesting. And I like what you're doing. Just keep doing it. Not imposing any kind of, thought of what you should or shouldn't do, or, you know, anything that was, you know, against where you were coming from in any form or fashion, whether it's the way you shot it or the story you were telling or the way something was edited. Basically, you know, you had the freedom to just do, you know, I mean, and that was really important, to just do.
Yeah. And I think that was important because, you know, by the time I'm there in the late 80s or mid to late 80s, that approval is not always available. And since I knew who you all were, sometimes I would really kind of ask you all for feedback, because some of the professors that I had, you know, would tell me that my work was crap.
Oh,
And, you know, to this story about a Black woman back to Cuba was, you know, unrelatable. No one would want to listen to it or think about it, because it's dealing with a communist country. You know, just all kinds of like misguided information that, you know, was, you know, irrelevant in the long run, because unfortunately I am going to have to, like, you know, put somebody down here. But it's like the professor who said that to me had like a B movie that was on, you know, one of those kind of like, you know, 4 o'clock in the afternoon movies that have never been heard of. And this little student film that I made as my first film, Crocodile Conspiracy, is still distributed by Third World Newsreel, and it's in the Criterion Collection. So, excuse me, your work, my work? I don't think so. No.
one thing that's interesting too is that I can remember as an undergraduate, I was taking a video class, and it was a TV class where you did, you know, you go out with oh God, which was it? It was oh God. It was this reel-to-reel video. I don't even remember what the format was anymore. But the long and the short of it is, you know, pardon me, what'd you say? The power?
Probably half inch.
Yeah.
Half inch
Yeah.
reel.
Quarter pack.
Yeah, Portapac, exactly. And, you know, so I did my little thing on the Dunbar Hotel, whatever, and there's something that happened. And the professor said, you have to finish this project, because remember, this might be the only time you'll ever get a chance to do anything like this. You know, and I was like, really? You're talking to me, you know? But anyway, you know, that was an experience. You know, it was an experience basically, you know, going from not having approval to basically, well, you know, semi approval, to then having, you know, someone say, just go do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Then what were your besides Shirley Clarke, what examples from like third world cinema or African cinema were particularly relevant to York? And could you also talk a little bit about some of the interventions that you made with camera gear?
Yeah, let's see. You said the first one would be some of the third world. Well, when we first came to school, LSAO Taylor was there, and he had he was the person that did the third world cinema. And that was just for the first year that I was there. And then what was interesting from that point on, it was us since we were all master students, we were passing the class around. And so several of us were teaching the class together, but I at that time didn't want to teach. So I did a couple of workshops, but then it was for your TA money. And I figured I made more money as
Oh, sorry, Ben, you broke up. You made more money as what? Oh, oh, darn. Looks like we might have lost him for a second.
Well, going back to the third world cinema classes, Alicia Taylor was teaching by the time I got there. Is Ben back? No? Well, Alicia Taylor was teaching when and I saw film.
Hello.
Oh, there you go. I'll be quiet. We didn't hear what you were going to say, what you were saying.
Everyone can see and hear you. Good.
Yes.
I can't see them, but I will continue as if you can. The third world cinema classes were held by LSAO Taylor, and all of us carried that all the way to the point that Tashombe, because he was working on his degree in theater and I bet you I'm not on.
Yeah. Okay, so I think the point that we're all trying to make is that the information about third world films were passed on to us, and then for people who don't know what we're saying when we talk about third world film is, films that were made by people in their own film language or film style that came from their community. So we're talking about Cuban cinema was very big for us. Cinema Novo from Brazil. The whole notion that you'll hear another one of our colleagues, Haile Garima, will talk a lot about imperfect cinema by Espinosa, that was created to talk about how our films have a different accent to them, or that they're not always the best or most polished films in terms of production values, but we have a lot of heart and we bring the people from our communities into our works. So those were the kinds of things that influenced us to make the kinds of films that we did.
And also too, going back even further, I mean, I was really impressed by Zora, which I'm not the only person that was impressed by Zora, but Zora Hurston had a real impact on me.
Mm-hmm.
The whole idea that she was, going around the South, going around Florida, basically collecting stories, collecting songs. And then, there's, some film clips that I've found that I use in some of the presentations that I've done. But the bottom line is that she was this, African-American woman way back when, who was doing things similar to what we wanted to do, but we wanted to concentrate more in a filmic or video way. But it was still like, when you talk about who were our four fathers, four mothers, or whatever, I always think of Zora, and I always think of Sam Ben, Ousmane Sam Ben, because the father of African cinema, and it's like, that was when I got for the very first time to see, like I mentioned earlier, people who look like me and look like, the people of our community.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Very much so, very much. And on that line of, go ahead, I'm sorry, go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, and as for me, I was really impressed with artists that influenced me as painted artists. Also writers like 100 Years of Solitude and The Invisible Man. And then also writers like Zora Neale Hurston, and I consider her my major emulator. I like what she was able to do in saving and archiving our language and our stories. That language thing is the one that got me, because I really, when I first started with reading of her, I didn't like it because of the diction. It was so hard to read.
Difficult.
But then after I started reading it, I'm like, wait, she was keeping all of our dialectic symbolisms in our language too. So it also, with my daughter, who was a speech pathologist, it also is also a thumbprint that she was able to leave too, because it shows which cultural group we came from through whatever language syntax that they were using. So it's a real interesting thing that the sister was able to do, that I think she highly influences me even today. The one that influenced the now that I use a lot is emergent strategy with Octavia Butler and that whole brood. And so I think a lot of what I'm seeing that we use as a template is a kind of a grounding with we're all males, but the grounding through Mother Nature and Mother Visions, I think, is what really grounded the world, the LA Rebellion, a lot. Because even with myself, my first piece was about Earth Mother and her giving birth to babies, and that's Medea. I did that in 71, 72. And then I is about an African wind goddess coming to the United States to see her folks. So I've always kind of used the metaphor of a woman as a way to view things, mainly because I think that viewpoint never really gets seen, but it's really extremely balanced if you show through that perspective, because it includes the male and female perspective.
Yeah, and for me, it was really important for me to basically, show something about my interior self. The struggles I was experiencing. The things about the value of my femininity. The value of ritual. The value of having a spiritual life and manifesting that in some way, and that was like really, really important, to me, at that particular time. It's still important, but in that particular time period, it was like super important to get it out. And it's interesting because, when I saw Ben's work, which I thought was really, really amazing, it's like, one of the reasons why I felt like I could like talk to him about my own work, and eventually, we worked on each other's projects, and he worked on mine. He worked on almost every last one of my at least 3 of my projects. Okay. There was another project I did called Fears, which never got to the point of being edited. But, that was, seeing his work, then there was like a link for me in terms of what I was doing, and his input was really very, very significant in terms of my carrying through with finishing my projects, what have you. And it was a time when, I wasn't necessarily always looking to filmmakers, as people to, provide input. I was really much, because of my background, music was really important to me, and also because I have so many people in my family who now unfortunately are all gone, but, who were musicians of some sort, and then after that, I discovered women artists in LA who, some kind of way I flowed into, their space. And it wound up being very amazing because, I saw Betty Saar's work, Found Objects. I saw Senga Nangudi. She worked with, the perspective of the female body, has a certain amount of elasticity, and she showed that in her work by way of working in nylon stockings. And that was like, so she was one of the people that I collaborated with, because I would I shot a lot of photographs, of her works, and some of them now are being exhibited, with her works. And it's kind of really amazing how your influences, flow back and forth, depending on how open you are. And then when I saw Zeinabu's ideas, I'm going like, we had a brief conversation one time, and I'm going like, we're really, kind of like coming from the same place, in terms of that manifestation of the femaleness, the physical femaleness, the spiritual femaleness. And it was like really, it's kind of interesting how, if you're open, being open is really one of the most important things about being able to do creative work. You have to be open, but but go on, I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, just to kind of piggyback on what you were saying too, was like, when I look back, water ritual and I influenced me. You all showed me, particularly you two, because you all were doing things that were more, you were playing with form, you were being more experimental with your work. And you also were exploring African diasporic spirituality or ideas or symbolism with women in the work. So I saw that and I knew that that was okay to kind of keep doing those kinds of things with my work. And then also just, as both of you already been mentioned, just being informed by seeing, works from filmmakers from Africa. And I, yes, some men, but also the other unknown heroine who does not get talked about as much is Sarah Malbador, with Sambizanga, because Sarah came from a political background. She was involved with the MPLA in Angola's independence struggle, and she interned on Pontecorvo's masterpiece film, Battle of Algiers, and came up through there. So that idea of, like, as Ben was saying earlier, of a woman character protagonist being symbolic of a struggle, that's something you clearly see in a lot of Ben's films, and of course in Ben's film I. But for me, Sambizanga was like one of the eye-opening films, that couple, that love that couple had, and that commitment to freedom at all costs was incredible. So I just want to point that out for people to try to be on the lookout for, because I believe that Sarah's two daughters are trying to restore Sambizanga. There's a bad copy of it right now on YouTube, but I'm hoping that that will change and that we can get to see the film as it should be seen. I want to switch gears just a little bit because Chanel asked a little earlier about how some of us were parents at the time that we were film students, and you two were role models for me. I was not a parent at that time, but I distinctly remember coming to UCLA and then seeing you with your daughter, on campus, and Barbara actually seeing, I think it was Sephrin, or one of the kids was underneath the edit tables with a coloring book and some, crayons.
That might be my older son. Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
And actually, my younger son actually was in Alile Sharon Larkin's film, A Different Image.
Right.
He's a little boy sitting on a curb.
Okay. Yeah.
So in other words, it was I worked on Alile's film. My daughter was a boom operator on Alile's films. And so we all worked on each other's projects. And it was a very kind of like, you knew you needed a crew. And you knew essentially, basically, that there's certain people you could go to who would, say yes. And it was like, because you knew that, there was this reciprocity that's going to happen. You work on their stuff, they're going to work on your stuff, and they're going to give it their all. And essentially, that was one of the, the marks of being, part of that group of people who was there at the time when we were there. And Ben was there when Larry was there, and when Charles was there, and Jama, and John and other people, that basically we did not have the benefit of their presence. We basically, because when I got there, they were gone. Charles was still around. I could see Billy Woodbury. Ben, of course, was there. And so it was kind of like a different sort of experience. But I had kids, okay, and at the time, I lived next door to my mother, and she was a reluctant babysitter, but she was, she was there, and basically she did it. She would help out when she could. But it was one of those situations where you almost wound up having like an extended family because of how you collaborated and how in the ways you were really looking at each other's back, watching each other's back, basically because, their zest for you to, complete your work, to get your ideas filmically across. Basically, that's another form of support that, was vital, But one thing I wanted to mention too, is you mentioned about that diasporic, influence. I think also, I saw this term. I was reading an art review on something that's, I don't know which one of the museums in New York would, it talked about diasporic longing, that longing to connect, with your ancestral past, and what all that meant. Was that about myth making, new myth making? What is it about bringing about ritualistic ideas, maybe? Or maybe it was just about touching on another part of yourself that you had no other way of doing other than tapping into the spirit of who you individually were. But at the same time, you had all these people coming together to boost up what you were trying to do. And that was something I thought was really, really very significant.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So,
and for me, with the children, with child, I had one daughter, and I don't know. The thing that I thought was fun was at that time, most men weren't thought to be with their children.
Mm.
And so I used that a whole lot because I would walk in with my child and people were pretty amazed that here's a black man with his baby. And so I kind of used that, and I also worked with my daughter in a way that made it possible for her to be in those places. So I just remembered I met a few of my friends when I was doing Roman gallery festivals. I was raised in a movie theater, and my father and family let us ride bicycles up and down the theater. We could run and rap. It was like, and so I let my daughter use the playground too, because it's boring to just sit there, right? And so she would be crawling between the chairs and around the space, and people say, "Whose child is that?" And then they would see her hugging my leg when I was making the presentation for the next film. And so I just remember that part. Also, within editing, my daughter was with me in the editing room in a cuddling position where she could just sit there next to my mixer and editor while that was going on. And she grew up in that environment. And then the thing that I thought was interesting, even when I taught at Howard, the first semester I was hired, I had just gotten a divorce, so I didn't know where I didn't have a place for my child to stay. So for school days, during the school hours, and I didn't have a school for her immediately. So guess what? I put her up front and center on the front desk at Howard, and she was one of the students, and she later got her master's from there. But while she was there, I just whispered in her ear, and I told her, "You better keep quiet and act like a young adult with these, because you're eventually going to go to college here." And so she took it to bear, and so she would come up and her drawings and stuff like that, like the other students were doing on catching up. And so I don't know. I found that it was really quite wonderful to be a male with a child at that time, because most people, a black male with a child, because most people didn't think that it was possible.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a really important thing to just
and
highlight for everybody. We did what people didn't think was possible. Yeah, we're
like
gonna.
that, just rub it in their face. They see how we can get together. It works. All these stereotypes don't work.
Yeah.
So that was the way I liked about all this. And then for the women that came, when we were all men, we knew. I remember all of us discussing, oh, these guys are trying to play us against each other. Oh, so they're trying to bring in nothing but sisters now, because they didn't want tired of all of us brothers, so they wanted to bring sisters for a double hit, so it'd be a woman and a black person. So we also, the thing about filmmaking at that time, that was about, I would say, about 300 pounds of material that you had to the camera, the mixer, all of that material was almost 300 pounds of equipment. And so we were like, no, we're not going to let the sisters just be the ones that are carrying this. We're going to get involved and have them come and help us on, like you work with us Thursday to Friday, the template that we set up. Give us your time Thursday to Friday, whichever ways you can. From Thursday to Sunday, from Thursday to Sunday, and whatever times within that time period that you can give us your time, then do that. And then the good thing about UCLA is they taught us multiple skills. And so it wasn't like USC where you're just learning to do camera or you're just learning to just direct. With us, they wanted us to be independent filmmakers. And with that, it was learning each of those 5 major positions. And so I think that made it really easy for us to shoot out in the world, because everybody had a general idea of how sound works, because with the what is that camera? I mean, that was called a Nikon? No, what was the camera?
Yeah,
the real was, I forgot
the Eclair. We had an Eclair, and also we had what was that other thing? I can't remember.
Eclair,
no, it was another. I can't remember what it was, but anyway, and inaugural and all that stuff, that extra equipment. We had so much extra equipment.
That's what I was trying to think.
Nagra. But we had so much equipment that it was. My daughter, when she went to Howard, she decided that she didn't want to be a filmmaker. She wanted to go into broadcast because she didn't want to have to lug all that equipment around, and it was interesting, her perspective on that. But she was there, she was there for us, and she, whatever, she would help whenever she could.
Yeah, I think that was, we need to,
same with
I want to encourage people to start to ask us questions in the comments. But I just want to also kind of like jump in and say, that was the thing, is that we did involve our families and folks in the community in terms of our filmmaking process. So, it wasn't unusual for, me to go shoot part of my film at Bernard Nicholas's house, or, Charlie to come and bring Stevie in my apartment, and somebody from the, either Julie or Lele or somebody would come over and help take care of Stevie while Charlie was shooting the film. Or, we made Stevie be a part of the film, so it was pretty organic that way as to how we brought each other into the filmmaking process. And it was, as Ben said, it was, I'm sorry, I'm not sure if it was Ben or Barbara, one of you mentioned reciprocity. And I think that is like, we knew that, it wasn't anything we had to say like, well, you better do this and I'll come do that on film. It was like, we knew that we could count on each other, and that we would have different skills or different talents that we could bring to the production whenever we could do that. So that was what I think kind of kept us going. Let me ask us one last general question and see if we have any audience questions or comments. But one thing I wanted to see if you had any reflection of an experience from the work that we were able to do, that you're particularly proud or you thought was successful, or even if you had some regret or doubt about something
Hmm.
you were willing to share.
Oh, that's an interesting question, because and I was thinking about that earlier too, Um, just the idea you were able to complete it and put it out there for people to see. That to me was the most amazing thing, you know. And for some of the work that I was doing, was not always, receptive, basically. I mean, people are more interested in my work years and years later than they were earlier on when I was, ready to show it, and it was disheartening. It was painful, you know. And now I'm like, I'm glad I did it, because people are looking at it and understand, and there's an understanding, and then there's a dissection, and people analyze it, and that, and I have to respond to that. But it was very hurtful. It was extremely hurtful. And it made me kind of wonder, well, am I doing what I should be doing? Am I, where, how can I get people to understand? But basically, look at what's there, and then we can talk about it. That's the way I felt about it. But sometimes there was not that receptivity to be able to engage, and that was painful.
Ben?
Yeah, let's see. Yeah, for me, I found being in film school and the whole experience with everybody that I got to meet, especially on the Black, Latino, and Native American side, was really, really a phenomenal experience for me after leaving like Arizona State and New Mexico. As to be in a totally immersive environment of a lot of Black people from all over the world and places is really fantastic. The other thought for me was I really found the place really, really honed us in to really survive in this filmmaking world, because they were so horrible with us at first that it made it where the pushback, like what Barbara's talking about, pushback like on some of the films that some of the ideas that we have, all made us push harder in ways, and it made the work because we were isolated in ways, it made it really strong in their own unique way. So I felt that way about the whole experience, and I must say that working with the next level of filmmakers that came in, I was happy to have that whole influx, because I found a lot more allegiance with Barbara's work and the people that we were working in video and experimental work, and also with Julie. I helped her do all of her wonderful films. So a lot of the extending the medium out was done with a lot of the ladies, and so I enjoyed working with them for those reasons, because they weren't like doing real standardized work. Larry, for me, was also an extremely important guy, because he's the one that voted for me to go to the school in the first place, and so I got to meet him, and he introduced me to all the powerhouse artists in the town. From David Hammonds, I met him first at his gallery there. I met the Brockman brothers. They took me in almost instantly. So without a wonder, Larry introduced me in 1 week to all the guys that ended up almost being my friends for the rest of the time here in Los Angeles.
Nice.
Wow.
Nice.
Yeah. So.
And that's musician, dancer.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the other part that's important about LA's art to me, is everybody was in it. It was like Horace Tapscott. I met him through dancers, the whole dancing groups were in it. So, and the philosophers like Dr. Lagan and Mrs. Lagan, all of that was in the mesh of this community when I first got here.
And poets.
And it was a balanced look because it was a man and woman,
Yeah.
Sorry.
A really exciting period of time. It really, really was. And everybody was just trying to do their thing. And one reason that I was, so happy was that they would allow me to, to enter their space and ask questions. It's like, and film their responses, or video their responses. That to me was amazing because everybody was open. Everybody was trying to do the same thing. Everybody was, trying to basically put their work out there. They were artists, and basically people were, very open to sharing. And that's one of the things that I found. I mean, sure, you had egos here and there. I mean, I can't say that I experienced egos at the film school, but I can definitely say there are artists out there, and basically, but they were still open enough to let you, shoot them, put a mic in their face and basically talk to them about their work. And that was such a, I don't know, just an amazing time.
Yeah. Let me just jump in.
It is really wild how we could just.
Go ahead, Ben. Finish, and I'll come in.
I was just going to say that like Bob Marley, we were able to interview him, and all the people from the World Saxophone Quartet, some of these folks that Barbara knew that were a part of the whole set of underground avant-garde artists. So it was really fun to just reach out and say, Bob Marley, can we interview you? And then he says, like, yeah. I mean, those were really pretty wonderful things, and that started me on the road of documenting people. So then I did Peter Tosh the following year, and and it was BB King, Memphis Slim. All of those folks at that time, as media was just growing and independent video was just happening, we were able to interview a lot of powerful people, I felt, and they just simply said yes.
Yeah. And part of that, I mean, contextualize it a little bit, is that you probably were the only people of color that were being asked to be interviewed by some of these, great people. I'm sure the majority of the interviewees or people who were doing the documentation at that time were probably white males. They were probably not, people who looked like them. And then I just wanted to kind of let people know, like, one of the really interesting things that Ben is talking about that Larry Clark did, which was very influential to the development of the movement, was he made ties with the theater company Pasla, and he got a lot of the actors to be involved from theater to come in to be involved with us at UCLA in terms of the filmmaking. So that whole thing about making alliances with people, you didn't always have to all be filmmakers. You could be artists, you could be musicians, you could be doing just whatever, things that they could be creative, or they could be more politically or socially oriented. Just everybody kind of like trying to come together to tell stories that were more representative of who we were. That was something that was important, or really important to us. And then for me personally, I really got the whole notion of the audience, serving the audience or serving the community through our films was like that was what made me keep doing it, was because when you actually showed the work and you could see people, laughing or crying or just reacting and talking, we as folks talking back to the screen when we show stuff. And so, it's good if you start having an audience, in Burkina Faso react to something that they don't even really understand because they don't necessarily speak all that much English, and your work is in English, but they can still connect with the work, even though, on a visual language, even though it might have a different spoken dialogue. That was really powerful, and that has sustained me in ways that I can't really express. So let me get to some of these questions here. Chanel asked, How have you kept making work in your community after UCLA? For instance, Ben, your work at Chaos is integrally grounded in the community. Can you talk about your experiences and what challenges get in the way? Before you answer that, Ben, can you tell us a little bit about what Chaos is for those in our audience who might not know what Chaos is?
Okay. Yeah, after doing all of what we were talking about, touring and working with our work, uh, I came back after teaching 3 years at Howard and said that we need to really study how to do media. So I put together this place called Chaos Network. At first, it was called Video 3333. And I started it right after Ulysses and I had worked with the Electronic Cafe, which was right next door, which was Zooming like we're doing now. We created a teleconferencing connection between 5 coffee shops in Los Angeles during the 1984 Olympics. That itself opened my brain up as to what, opened my brain to the future of media as a way to communicate over the phones and start streaming. So I started working that way in '84 out of the community-based place called Electronic Cafe. And that helped us be internationalized because then we were able to then connect with anybody over the phone. So that part helped me expand out, and I was able to do projects with Cuba, with South Africa through the video phone that we had at that time, and also places like New York. And we also, when 9/11 happened, we connected New York, Jordan, Israel, California, and all of those places, and had a conversation about 9/11, and that was really cool too. So we use the medium as a way, that medium as a way to handshake and connect outside our community. So the thing about working with the community, so then I pitched the idea to CalArts when I started teaching there about connecting art centers around Los Angeles. So we connected
Oh, I think we lost Ben again, unfortunately. Oh, no, here he is. Ben, you broke up again. Okay.
No.
There you go. Nope. Okay. We'll bring Ben back in as soon as we can. I'm gonna keep moving on to another question from Sabrina. Hi, Sabrina. So much of your work is finding new audiences today. I'm wondering what you're observing about these new audiences and how they're responding to earlier work in your recent projects differently than audiences did back in the 80s. Barbara?
Yeah, I found it very encouraging, simply because of the fact that the work has been around for a very, very long time. And, like I said earlier, it was very disheartening, and very painful, to basically, not having a certain level of response, but a positive response. But now it's just amazing because there are people writing about my works, and I'm going like, really? And I'm coming across a lot of people who are writing about my work, and that's interesting, their perspective in terms of how their insight. I mean, they're coming from a place of wanting to explore the idea of our diasporic connection, and also to put it in terms of what went on sociologically at the time in which we were doing the work, And basically, you know, the dialogue between those people who are writing and analyzing, it's been also a learning experience for me, you know, because as people, you know, bring up ideas about your work, you know, it expands your own understanding of your work. And that's one of the things I found, you know, really, really compelling about, you know, coming across people who, you know, approach me and say, well, you know, I've seen your work, I, you know, really like your work, and, you know, and I'm writing this piece, and to see the pieces and, you know, the amount of really thought behind the pieces, it's just, it's very encouraging, very, very encouraging.
Okay. Then we're responding to this question about seeing work now as opposed to when we first had it screened back in the 80s. If you have any thoughts.
Well, one of the more interesting things for me is that whole group of first filmmakers that we had was Beverly Robinson, Jeanette Henderson were the two women that we had, and then all the rest were men. And when we had that our first screening, the FBI showed up, and they said, we heard that your films have done really well here, so what we would like to do is to have a special screening to study how reactions are from the films. And so my Medea piece was really done from 8mm to 16mm by the FBI for all of us. And that was the more interesting thing about our first screening, is that it grew the layer of the FBI to come down. I remember the man's name, Larry Cano, and another young lady. And I've seen them periodically, maybe about up to 20 years after that. I would see him periodically at various places. And all he always told me was, keep on doing what you're doing.
Interesting, really.
Wow.
I would have thought just the opposite.
Me too. Whoa.
Yeah, no, he was saying, keep on doing what you're doing. That was what he kept saying, which I thought was really pretty interesting.
Wow. Wow. Okay. Interesting. Okay. I'll just briefly chime in and say,
yeah, to build off of that is pretty interesting, because what happened is then they brought in all ladies, and then they also stopped Hailey from being a TA.
Ah, interesting.
They just paid him a cash check and said, don't teach anymore.
Wow. See, I didn't know this.
yeah.
I'm learning something here.
Right. Wow.
Yeah, that's something that me and Hailey did some catch up on about 10 years ago. We were talking, and then he says, you know what even really was weird? What happened on that day is that he was staying in Beverly Hills, and the Beverly Hills was the white woman who owned it. She called him and said, oh, Hailey, the FBI wants to go through your room, but I'm not going to allow them. But I thought I should at least tell you that.
Wow.
Damn.
So that's how serious. That made me feel good. It made us know that we were serious.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay. Wow. Okay. I
We all kept it mostly to ourselves, but knew that it was real. Yeah. I even have the flyers called The Birth of a New Image. So we did have a name for our group. We called it The Birth of a New Image, and but nobody liked it. So so that's the reason we settled into the tongue-in-cheek one that he did. Because he meant it kind of tongue-in-cheek. Well, we could say LA Rebellion, and they were like, yeah, that works. So that's how we got labeled that way.
Right.
Also, we didn't name ourselves either, because we had a chance to name, because we knew that we had something going once, about the time when our works were like shown by the FBI and then also grabbed by FNAC in Paris as a retrospective for African American cinema in the 79, 80.
Okay.
So we knew we had something going on then. So
Yeah, yeah. And I just wanted, just as a through line, because the last conversation was with the Horizon Collective in Miami, and one of the things that they do was film festivals to promote images of Caribbean people, because you don't really see very many images even now of Caribbean people, and usually when we do see mainstream images of Caribbean people, they're in some kind of crisis or victimization situation. So even when we were, part of the reason people started to learn about our work was that, like Julie and you, Barbara, took the films and went out to film festivals like Cannes to have the work shown, and people started to learn more about what it was that we did. But I remember, like I think it was with Alile, we might have done a screening like in church basements or definitely in some of the outdoor parks, just like hanging up some white sheets across the trees and showing the films or showing the videos and what have you. So, we also, as filmmakers, made sure the audiences got opportunities to see the films that we did make in whatever way that we could. So I think that's
that was
also
real important, because even when we would go on tour with our films, we would then book it to all the community organizations for free or anything they would want. So if, like when I was in Philadelphia, I showed it at about 5 or 6 other places other than the Pittsburgh Museum or all the bougie places. We would show it there, and then we would take it to our people, no matter.
right.
I didn't have the
red wall, whatever.
Yeah. I didn't have screening opportunities. I just didn't. I mean, I had very few screening opportunities. And that was that was really interesting, because now I'm, it looks so interesting to see how museums have bought my films, and screened in different, museums and galleries. And whereas before I just didn't have any screening opportunities. And actually what I wanted to do was I wanted to screen in museums and in galleries, because I had this art orientation from the people that I had been around, because they were painters and sculptors and, and their work was normally shown in that kind of environment. And so I was sort of looking at that. But, the other situations that I had that I did have screenings, the few that I did have, again, I was at a receptivity level that was not really, kind of high. But it was the connection between, the different places where my work has shown now it's really more open to larger audiences, I think, because basically, like even art and practice, I mean, like all our work showed at art and practice. A lot of people come through, that particular environment to look at works. And then the other things, the European stuff basically has been interesting because there are festivals and there are, screening opportunities where the work is there, and it stays there for days and maybe a couple of weeks and maybe a month. And that's something that, basically, I did not have that opportunity in the past. And I really, I enjoy it. I enjoy walking in and seeing, a whole room, of my work, which I didn't, I did not have, again, the opportunity. And also too, when we lived in, we lived in LA, and there were different outlets basically that could have shown our work, that really could have embraced our work, and I don't think they really understood, how film really related to art. And that was one of the things that I thought was really unfortunate. I think they've changed up now, thank goodness, because these art organizations basically, the ones in particular I'm thinking of, basically, they are very much into, inviting the community in to see the works, which also expands our audience, our local audience.
Mm-hmm. Mhm. Yeah. We probably need to start winding up, but there's been a couple people have been asking the same question, so I wanted to address this right. First, let me just say that just so for people who may not know, Art and Practice is a gallery space and performance space that is in Leimert Park, right down the street from Ben's Chaos Network. And in the past few years, they have shown a lot of our works in that space and done programs with us in that space. Um, I did want to. There's several questions of people who want to know how to see our films. Why are the LA Rebellion films so hard to find? And where can you see them? Um, so if you all have places where people can see the work. I will start by saying that, you can go on to UCLA television, film and television archive and see some of our works on the website, our first films on the website. And there was, I don't know if it's still available, there was a DVD collection of our works that people were able to write away for and get for free. And that had a lot of our student films. Um, but my films are on Criterion Collection right now. My short films are on Criterion Collection. For those of you who have Criterion, um, and I want the others here to say where people might find their works as well.
Well, Thorough Newsreel, basically, they were open to my work so long ago, you know, and now, they get a lot of requests, for it. Sometimes things go to, to UCLA archives, and I've made it very clear I want them, the archives to basically contact me, and I'll, sort of veer them over to Thorough Newsreel. And Thorough Newsreel is an incredible source of information or films on films of, people from, Latin America, all over the planet, people of color, but a lot of African American films, they do distribute. And so, I've always steered people over to Thorough Newsreel because they've been very, very helpful and supportive of me. And I've been with them for 1,001 years. They have everything except my Horace Tapscott film. That one I don't have a distributor yet. But it's it's amazing to me that places like their World Newsreel have been able to stick in there, and support filmmakers like us all these years. They have been around a long time.
Yeah. Hmm. Just so for people who don't know, Third World Newsreel is a film distribution company and production space that's been in New York since probably at least the late 70s. It was a series of different newsreel organizations that were across the country. California Newsreel, Chicago Newsreel. I think there might have been one maybe in one in New Orleans, I'm not sure. But there were different places all over the country. And it was basically like, if you want to think of it and put my professor hat back on, it's kind of like YouTube before there was YouTube. This was like our way of getting information about our communities, but it was done by regional filmmakers when we only, at one time, we only had three broadcast outlets, or four broadcast outlets. It was ABC, NBC, CBS, and PBS. And so filmmakers would make films that were related to their communities and cycle them around through those different organizations that I just mentioned. And Third World Newsreel is one of the ones that are still around and still doing the same work that they did way back then. Ben, how can people see any of your work?
Yeah, my work, the Medea is on YouTube. The rest of my work, you can get it through UCLA, and I prefer doing it that way because when I rent it through the smaller companies, they only give me about $30 or something like that per screening. I get much more through college and distribution, so I don't have it in the mix like that.
Mhm. Okay. Okay.
So because I can make more funds than just spending, letting my work just go out there with nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the things.
So if you want to get a hold of it, just hit up UCLA, and then we can they'll send you the copies, and I can okay it. They act as a real good distributor for me so far.
Okay, that's good to know. Before we roll off, I want to make sure that Alile is on here. She has a comment on here, so I just wanted to acknowledge our fellow cinematic sister, Alile Sharon Larkin, and then also another filmmaker whose work I absolutely adore and love and admire, and that's Sophia Nahil Allison, one of our newer filmmakers. So that's the sister who did Love Song for Latasha Harlins. And oh gosh, Sophia, I'm forgetting your new piece that was on last month, from earlier this month. No, sorry, last month. So forgive me for that. But at any rate, it's good to
also a shout out to Sabrina Craig.
Yeah. She was here. I shouted out to her earlier. But there's some filmmakers on here. Appreciate seeing you all here and engaging in the conversation. So do we have you? Are you all up for one last question or comment?
Sure.
We're over time, but okay. Chanel, do you want to pick which one you want us to answer, excuse me? No.
Well, I'll just, there's this one that Chanel had about, didn't basically close down the interstate to shoot Water Ritual. It wasn't, it wasn't on the highway. It was basically on an area that was decimated, but it was not on the highway. I'll just say that. Because I saw this question and I went, oh, okay.
But the 105 was built on top of it, right?
Yeah, the 105 was built on top of it. It was an area that basically for 10 years lay fallow because they, by eminent domain, they kicked people out of their homes. And basically you had this area that was just like, barren, and that's what the location was for Water Ritual. It was just this barren space, and it was like, finding, because I had such an affinity for, objects, found objects, and art from found objects. To me, it was the perfect location to, to shoot that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Last question then, from Latoria Newton. What has the longevity of your work taught you about filmmaking and community? So that's our last question.
Basically just doing it. Go on, Ben.
Yeah, for me, I'm just really excited about the prospect of how our works were so far ahead that they're right on time now.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the part that's kind of exciting to me, is to see that that kind of having really engaging the work in a way that it has a lasting effect. And that's the thing that I really like. With Medea, I just showed it, last year, year before last, and it was amazing to see that little bitty shorty film doing well up against big films in Paris, And so it's that kind of stuff that I'm really amazed at, that first little germ out of your brain into a film, and then is lasted now 45 years, because I think I did it about 45 years ago. So.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Because I don't think of any of our work as being that old. I just don't. It's just, I just can't think of it as being that old.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that kind of
that's
is.
what it is.
It is. Yeah.
It is.
Barbara,
I know it's amazing to me because I was doing this stuff on I'm doing a retrospective work on Vietnam, and that's 50 years ago.
Oh, geez.
50, yeah, that's like a long time. That's a century almost.
Yeah.
So it's just really interesting to, and so I have photographs and ideas from that time period that I've never shown. So that's my next work is really, we have a book that's coming out. It's called The Afro-Cosmic World of Ben Caldwell.
Oh, lovely.
Yay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
And then within that, I do a whole deep dive into war and how I was able to wade through it with this overused word called love.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you all. I want to just close out with want to say that for me, what the longevity of our work has taught us is that, and what I want to pass on to the sisters in the new Negress Society, as well as other filmmakers, is that, sometimes I do get a little bit down because I wish that we could have made more work. But the work that we did do, really, it's evergreen. It's still available and accessible, and it's been so wonderful to see new audiences come to the film. And so even though we as filmmakers know that it is a struggle to get any film made, it doesn't matter if it's 5 minutes or a feature length film. Every film can be a struggle. But your passion and your contribution, your voice, is so important, and we all need those visions, that sense of creativity. So keep playing with form, keep telling our stories in whatever way you can, and don't let anything stop you, and use the people that are around you that are supportive to keep making the films. I think that's, if we have any legacy, I think that's part of our legacy, is just, in some ways it is Malcolm X, by any means necessary. And do what it is, do whatever it is that feels right to you, because we all made different types of films. We didn't make, one cookie cutter stamp type of film. We did documentary, we did narrative, and we did experimental. And sometimes we mix them up. So that is our legacy to you all. So with that, Chanel, you want to come back in? There you go. Thank you. Yeah.
I wanted to say one thing. The guy that I co-teach with,
oh man, I'm just like taking it all in. Thank you so much. I know we went over time, but I thank you so much for continuing to extend yourself to everybody. We're just seeing all this love pour in the comments. So many folks are just super grateful for you to continue to share your experience, your insights, everything. And I know personally, and I'm even looking over at my fellow Negresses over here, is just like in any way that we want to.
Hello. Tell them to come in.
Continue to make the work, but also, let people know that, allow people. What has Ben putting up? What is your hat saying, Ben?
It's the new Negro.
Oh yeah, the new Negro. Yes, exactly. See, it all comes together. It all comes together.
That's the guy that I co-teach with.
But yes, continuing to let people know about your work, continuing to uplift your work and uplift you, not just as filmmakers, but as human beings, as spirits in this world. We just thank you so much. And please let us know how we can continue to support you, how can we continue to support each other. And I don't know, that's all I got right now. I'm just like overwhelmed with all goodness.
Thank you for inviting us.
Yes, of course. Thank you for showing up.
All right.
Thanks.
All right, Nene, you can take us out. Thank you so much. Have a good night, everyone, or good whatever the time of the day is for you. All right. Bye, everyone.